Hey everybody, how you doing? Just wanted to come on for another round of Druidic culture and civilization. And today I want to talk about in this video at least, I want to talk about the structure of the Gorsedd. I'm also going to talk about the Gorsedd, the name of the Gorsedd, and why that's actually pretty pivotal insofar as the interest of it. And the etymology of it as well. So I wanted to start by saying that my name is Druid Caste, founder of the Druid Circle, and soon Druid Order of Blessed Stone and Wood, along with Druid University. All right, let's begin. So the first thing that I want to talk to you about is that um, this idea of Gorsedd, okay, it's a made up name. That's first and foremost, okay. When we talk about the name Gorsedd and apply it to the caste system in the Iron and Bronze Age, all that means is one and only one thing. That is that it was a name given to a group of people later in the in the 1800s who were artisans or bards. So they were bards, and this is why there's so much confusion today, and this is why there's so many websites out there that are going to tell you different things, and they're just simply not correct, and it's misinformation. So I'm going to give you some straight facts, like I always do, undeniable facts, and we could go from there. All right. So I want to start by saying that according to the Grand Wizard of Wizards, Google, and its indoctrination, the word itself it says it's a community or meeting of modern day bards. That is not what the word Gorsedd means. Okay, so you could go ahead, you could go check Google out, and you can go ahead and check OBOD and ADF and all these other groups out. And here's the problem: it's all fake. There is no word. The word Gorsedd does mean something, but it has nothing to do with bards. Okay, and so for the record, I want to clarify that that is the case. All right. Number one, the word, two points I want to make. First of all, Gorsedd means throne. Okay, it means throne. Now, this includes an understood, if you will, an understood support system, because you can't have somebody at the top without without people at the bottom, if you will, right? So you need a base, and this goes for anything, right? You can't have a steeple without a foundation. Do you see what I'm saying? So that's what Gorsedd means. Gorsedd means a throne, but more importantly, a throne that has substantial edification underneath of it that made it what it is. Do you see what I'm saying? And this is pivotal because that basically is step one and part of the strength of identifying that this was a caste system and not a class system. Okay? Number two, when you look deeper into the Sumerian roots, okay, we talk about the word ship with regard to the operation of how it is structured, not ship as in that as necessarily just as in a boat. Think of ship as in a very living thing. Think of ship as with a captain and with the officers and the enlisted and the engineers and the civilians. You see what I'm saying? And that an officer is not a civilian. A civilian is not an enlisted. They're all separate castes, if you will, right? yet each having levels within itself. And I'm going to talk about that later, but that's the kind of picture I want you to get when I'm talking about the word Gorsedd. Number two, all right, when we go into the word Gorsedd and we go into the word ship, we find that even deeper, we find the word pyramid, okay? Now, Pyra, as we all know, means what? Fire, right? And the color of fire is gold. When we break pyramid down, we break it down into two words. The first word is pyrite, and the second word is sesame. So while that makes no sense, trust me, this is true. This is what etymologists do all day long. They evaluate words and they find out where the stems are and they try to make a cohesive definition based on the etymology of the word rather than a definition which tells you what a word means. Do you see what I'm saying? So the pyramid the comes from two words, pyrite and sesame. Here we go. Pyrite actually is flint, or rather, fool's gold. Now, I'm not going to go into the conspiracy of a dollar bill or our money having a pyramid on it and it being fool's gold because it's worth nothing. But the idea of fool's gold being flint coming from the word pyrite couldn't be a much better adaptation of breaking the word Gorsedd down into two parts. The second part I said earlier was sesame. Now, sesame, so let me go into this first. So sesame comes from the word shamash, which is Sumerian, and it actually means oil seed. Now, for all of you that know anything in Judaism about the shamash candle, like the shamash, right? On a menorah at a time called Hanukkah, there's a menorah and it's called a Hanukkah, and there's lights on it, but you don't light the lights, okay? You don't light the lights by just lighting lights. You take this light in the center, which is the shamash, and you use the shamash to go ahead and light the candle each night. Tiers, if you will. Tiers. It gets brighter and brighter, brighter and brighter each night, right? So that's where the word sesame comes into play, because without the sesame, you can't have the pyrite. Do you see what I'm saying? Without the sesame, without that oil seed, remember that you don't burn the shamash. None of these things are they're not like wicks that you light. What they are is they're little globules of oil that you light. You see what I'm saying? And then you empty oil into these little these the parts of the Hanukkah. You light the oil, and then the oil brightens up everything. And so you can't have the oil. You can't have the pyrite, the fool's gold, the flint, the bright, without the oil. And again, one is not the other, but one needs the other to be there. So when we start talking about the Gorsedd, which has nothing to do with bards, it's just a group of people who gave that name to their own organization. And that that three stripes, right? The three rays, that's not the Druidic symbol. It's a bardic symbol. But not getting so much off, I want to say to you guys that the real reason why this is important is to really evaluate the I guess, if you will, to evaluate the meaning of this word and why its strength lies in identifying a caste system. Okay? I could go on and on and on about the word, but I want to move on because there's other things that I also found in my research. So the Gorsedd, was the name of the caste. Okay, and this was the caste that the Druids would have been part of. Okay, you see, the Gorsedd was at least a 5-tiered system, a socioeconomic 5-tiered system during and around the time of the Druids, which was when the Bronze Age and the Iron Age. When Iron Age 1, Iron Age 2, when Late Bronze Age, Early Iron Age. Now, it could have been longer, but there are the times and points and times that we actually know. Next, there were 2 additional tiers out of those 5-tier systems. So out of the 5 tiers, there were actually 7, but 2 of which I want to cover in this talk because I think that they're important enough to address, but not important enough to go into big detail with. The 2 additional tiers were not truly integrated, I believe, in my reading, in any books on Druids. That's first and foremost. So what are these tiers? The first tier of these additional tiers was remedial, I wrote, yet still considered townspeople. Remedial does not mean in any way that these people were less. It just meant that they did not have the skills, but they could contribute to the community in which they lived. They communicated in a way that said, I can do, let me do, let me help. And they did. So they would have been the remedial part of the Gorsedd, of the caste. Within this first tier would have been the unskilled laborers who may have been less than an indentured servant. Okay, so they contributed, and what they would receive would be enough to sustain them. Okay, because after all, they did work, and you gave back in the caste. All right. Next, while remedial, they still had an incredible social impact upon the change of the Gorsedd. The second of these additional tiers, if you will, was the excursion or passing, yet not townspeople. The excursion or the people that came to this area were what we would call the Kachuri, and that's Cauirteoiri, the Kachuri. They were temporary residents and only have had or may have had consequential impact to the change of the Gorsedd. When we mean social change of the Gorsedd, we mean did these people actually change and impact such in a way that everything was changed? We understand with the butterfly effect that things change, that I could go out and not go out, and those 2 actions or no action at all dictates what the future looked like. With the Kachuri, or people that just basically visited, okay, they were basically people who could have been from any caste coming in to visit this specific caste or this specific area. All right. Next, there were separate tiers within the Gorsedd As such, tiers within a caste system were rarely, if ever, interchangeable. One cannot go from one tier to another tier. And that's the main difference between a class system and a caste system. Okay? Knowing that, here's what you need to know. I always think of the story of Cinderella with caste systems. And while it may be very nice and convenient that Cinderella was this very poor person who had a shitty life and wanted to go ahead and make sure that, they made sure that, she would do well in the world, right? And she would make the quote unquote American dream. It did not happen. It was a caste system. You stayed poor, and that's the reason why it's a fairy tale. It's a fairy tale because it could not happen. If it did happen, rarely it could have. If it did happen, it would definitely not have been, if you will, kosher, since we were just talking about the shamash. So I would say that it's very important to understand that we're more so inclined to think about the Gorsedd as a way to what? As a way to ensure how we can do the best we can within our tier. Next. Why is it important that we talk about this versus a class system? Because so many people, sorry about the pings, guys. So many people in life go around and say, you can be a Druid by reaching the following steps. And they start talking about you're a Bard first, you're an Ovate second, you're a Druid third. These are made up. That's not how it worked. And there's substantial evidence upon substantial evidence upon substantial evidence proving this, because the evidence that we have that says that, that it could have possibly happened clearly states that it could have possibly happened. But only possibly. There's no substantial evidence otherwise. And that's a problem. Because when you start telling people that you need to be a bard and then be an ovate and then be a druid, it took 20 years to be a druid or more. And the things that you need to know as a bard, it might have took 20 or more years. Ovate, 20 or more years. So it would have taken 60 years to have been a druid if you're using that psychology. And therefore, as a psychologist that claims, Philip Cargam, as a psychologist, I don't know what school of psychology he got his degree from, but he certainly doesn't know his history. But he does know how to sell, and he does know how to make money, because that's what they did. And we're going to talk about that more in the last part of these talks on the Gorsedd. All right. The second thing is that, in a class movement rather than a caste movement, you could move upward or downward based again on your decisions. If you made good decisions, you had good outcomes. If you made poor decisions, it led to poor outcomes. Not all the time, but statistically, it would have led to the appropriate parallel outcome. That couldn't happen in a caste system, but what could happen in a caste system is that you could move higher and higher, higher and higher within your tier, developing and based on the skill and things you knew how to do. All right, let's move on. So now that we know all this, and we understand that the caste system is definitely what it was, we can now say safely that when we listen to Ellis and we listen to Paxson and Paxson would really seriously disagree with me, and that's fine. And she her thought is allowed to disagree with that the other thought. It's that in any book that you read that talks about the bards and the ovids and the druids all being one, it's almost a slippery slope that when you read it, it goes from one paragraph to another paragraph that's usually saying, it seems that, it's almost possible that, it would resonate that, but it is not a reasonable and sound argument. It's simply a slippery slope saying, I don't want to go ahead and piss off some large orders or hurt them. And I'm out to say, I don't care whether or not we hurt other orders. I'm just simply saying that we can't go on continuing to lie about what the Gorsedd would have been. And knowing this, I think that it's really important to understand that there is clear differences between what the Druids are today, what the Neopagans are today. Just because you play dress up as a Renaissance fair doesn't make you a Druid, doesn't make you anything. All it makes you is someone that wants to be someone where deep down inside, you're allowing another person to tell you what you are or what you cannot be. I say no one shall determine who you are. No one should determine what you do. You determine what you do. I hope this talk was really interesting. I hope that you learned something more about this Gorsedd. We learned that the Gorsedd was definitely something that was quote unquote invented. It was just a word chosen out of a hat. And that though learning more deeply about the etymology of the word and understanding that it had nothing to do with the bards or the board, we'll go into that next. We can definitely say for certain that this is something that, should be reevaluated again, knowing that, remember, you cannot move within from a tier to a tier within a caste, or from a caste to a caste within a general caste system. And that's the point I hope you learned. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And again, if you like this video and you want to share it, please do. Also, remember that we are, next couple of weeks going to be getting a round of people together to really start joining this page and this group. I really want to thank you all for listening, watching, or whatever you did. But I hope you learned something and understand something a little bit more now about the structure of the Gorsedd. This was Druidic Culture and Civilization. My name is Druid Niklas Declan. As always, Gira Awin, Bet Shegobra, be it thus, be it thus. Thanks, guys.